And welcome back to Double Switch, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to show you how Act 2 is supposed to be played out. So, on top of capturing intruders left and right, we want to keep an eye out on Lyle the Handyman that will introduce us to new traps that will help us take care of the mummy, right? Otherwise, if we happen to capture Lyle the Handyman, then we're not able to do anything about the mummy. Now, are we? Like, it's going to be difficult. Even if we were to stop the mummy from activating the traps on the tenants, there's no way that we can take care of the mummy otherwise, because mummy has other means for this, for the tenants here at the Edward Arms. And all the meanwhile that we gotta keep an eye out on the intruders. And a bit of a tip I can give you for this game is to memorize the layout of each room, memorize what traps are in each room, and pay attention to the notification camera feeds on the left side. You may have noticed that there is a window symbol and a door symbol. Those symbols are there to let you know what intruder is coming from where. And that usually gives you a good idea on what trap what to use. So now not only do we have the monster guys swarming the place, we have these intruders in green suits known as the Scrolling Key. And their purpose on barging in is that they're looking for a specific key.
I want to get a picture of you for my story.
Story? What story?
The one I'm doing on the Edward Arms.
Anyway, we already know what happens when you capture Eddie there. In the meantime, you need to keep up on your capture count, because if you don't, well, believe it or not, Lyle the Handyman will let you know how of a horrible job you are doing, and the game will be over right there. So focus on your captures. Focus on your captures. Focus immediately in the storage room, because like I mentioned before, if they happen to go after the power box, that's a game over. And the captures in the storage room is tricky, because it's not like you get like a little beeping notification to notify you when to capture those intruders. You basically need to know that once their hands are on that handle, you'll need to capture them. Again, switch over to the camera feeds where Lyle the Handyman is, because otherwise, we're not going to be able to get the trap.
Mister, you don't understand. There are traps that you don't know about all over this building.
Meanwhile, keep an eye on those captures.
Watch out for this one.
Because if you don't keep focus on those camera feeds where Lyle the Handyman is, who will introduce you to new traps, you're not going to be able to get those traps, and that will lead to an inevitable game over. Second act is the longest between the three, because you gotta keep an eye on Lyle the Handyman to get yourself some new traps, and we got to keep an eye out on the mummies and protect the mummies, as if there's more than one mummy. We gotta keep an eye out on the mummy and, you know, keep the tenants safe. Now later on in the game, there's going to be a mandatory capture that we need to do, because we have to keep an eye out in the storage room and the basement, because there's a power box in the storage room that we gotta protect, and then there's the control panels that are protected, that needs to be protected in the basement.
Check this out.
As soon as you're done uncovering that new trap, immediately switch over to the band room to capture this intruder. Yeah, a lot going on in this game, and I want to say it keeps the game interesting. It's more interesting to keep up with than on Night Trap. Night Trap is linear, whereas Double Switch is not so linear. Like, it is linear to an extent, but the captures are so randomized that it keeps the game interesting. Again, as soon as you are done capturing that intruder in the band room, you want to switch over to Alex's room, because that is a mandatory save. We are here to protect the tenants after all. Speaking of tenants, here's another one that we gotta protect. Now that the mummy is introduced, we want to disable the trap that he is trying to use on the tenants, and then focus on the new traps that has been introduced to us by Lau the Handyman to capture the mummy. Now, we were doing this in the last video, but unfortunately, I had missed a new trap.
I know you think Eddie's your friend, but he's been flipping out here lately. And he's gonna try to switch you off from down here. And when he does, use this.
So now we have the conveyor trap. And that's going to be useful to us later on. In the meantime, just focus on the other captures. And honestly, if it sounds like that I have nothing else to say about Double Switch, ladies and gentlemen, you won't believe how many attempts it took me to attempt the A rank run on Double Switch. Oh, we'll get there when we get there. But you'll be amazed just how well I do in the A rank run compared to the actual run of this casual playthrough. Anyways, this is the trap that we missed, the cage trap. Once we get the cage trap, immediately switch over to Bruce's room, disable the basket trap, and then enable it as soon as the mummy steps on it. That is Brutus saved. You're welcome, Brutus. So now we technically have two more tenants that we need to save. We have two more tenants that we need to protect. And that will be the end of Act 2. But yeah, this game, like Night Trap, is full of trial and error. More so here because the captures are so random. Again, another mandatory capture here, because if you don't, then that guy is going to get to the power cables, and that's going to be another game over. Now, there is going to be another trap that'll be introduced to us in the basement.
What are you doing here?
Excuse me, ma'am, there's something I need to tell you. Eddie's my son.
Dun dun dun! My favorite capture right there.
Eddie's been cooped up in here a long time, you know.
Yeah, a lot of interesting key points of the story that we're missing. In all the meantime, that we have to focus on keeping an eye on Lyle the Handyman and the band members, because, yeah, another game over opportunity here. Disable a cage trap, and then enable it as soon as the mummy steps on. And there you go. And now we gotta get introduced to a new trap. So yeah, it turns out that Lyle the Handyman is Eddie's dad. And Elizabeth is Eddie's mom.
Hey, wait a minute.
Can't, ma'am. People here are in grave danger.
So yeah, I don't know the whole relationship status between every character in this game, but it's interesting. It is very, very interesting. So yeah, again, the only advice I can give you is to study each room and to study each trap.
Built this trap myself to keep Eddie away from the phone line.
So as soon as you get the phone line trap, switch over to the basement and use the conveyor trap on Eddie. Because believe it or not, he will make his way to the controls and will disable them, and that is another game over.
Your history.
So basically, the line that he had stated there is, if anyone gets to those phone lines, your history, which is another game over. So many game overs in this game, and that's what makes this game more interesting than Night Trap, because like I mentioned, the captures are random. Every single time that you play through this game, the captures are very random.
Good job. I mean, really great. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Ah! I thought I was a goner, didn't you? No, you ought to come over sometime and we'll get together.
Again, if Eddie gets near those phone lines, that's a game over. Another intruder will make his way to those same phone lines, and that will also be a game over. That's what I really like about Double Switch. It keeps you on your toes.
Phoebe, what are you doing?
Anyway, now we got to protect Phoebe here.
Later, I have to get the statue out of the building now.
In the meantime, just gotta keep an eye on the storage and the basement feeds. Because if you don't, well, you know what happens. I'm like a broken I'm like a broken record at this point, okay? There's a game over. There's a game over. This game is the Oprah of game overs. You get a game over. You get a game over. Everyone here gets a game over.
He was buried with it.
If this is real, that statue originally guarded the treasury of Isaacs.
Wait a second. That ties in with all the rumors about treasure in this building.
Disable the chair trap. And then enable it as soon as we capture the mummy.
Oh, you think you've won, huh? Huh? Do ya? Huh? You think you just take control of my building, my traps? Forget about it. No one's gonna leave this building alive. No one!
Surprise, surprise. Eddie was a mummy the entire time. Who would have guessed? Anyway, we are nearing the end of Act 2, so once we are done with this capture, we will be getting into Act 3, which is the shortest of the acts, but also the hardest of the acts, and we will see why once we get into it. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this part of Double Switch, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you in the finale of Double Switch in the next video. So until then, ladies and gentlemen.